the funny thing is when I finally like put the puzzle together a little bit, I said, well, someone said, well, how do you build a skyscraper? And I said, well, it's one house at a time. You just stack them on top of each other.
All right, Ken, welcome to Living Off Rentals.
Hey. How are you, Kirby?
Good.
Glad to be here.
Good. Yeah, I'm super glad to have you. It's an honor to have you here. Just, for a little bit of background for the listeners, Ken went from pretty much starting from scratch with no experience to developing $1.35 billion, that's with a B, in deals in one of the most, or if not the most competitive real estate market in the world, New York City. And some of these developments were high-end skyscrapers and huge multifamily developments. So obviously there's a deep background in real estate development and all kinds of real estate investing. But in addition to a lot of qualifications and accolades, Ken's also the international bestseller of the book Modern Wealth Building Formula, of which Jack Canfield, the creator of Chicken Soup for the Soul, wrote, "I know a billionaire that used Ken's formula. Listen to this guy. Real estate equals success." So that's a pretty impressive testimonial there. So I'm really excited to have you on the show and dive into your experience and advice for this audience.
Well, thank you so much. And it's a pleasure to be here and looking forward to, giving some value. That's all about paying it forward. So thank you again for the opportunity to have this stage and mic.
Absolutely. It's great to have you here. And, I just wanted to start off with your background. I think it's a good place to start, and kind of what led you to get into real estate in the first place.
If I look back, I wanted to become an engineer, but I really only knew how to play sports. So it took me a few years in college to realize that I needed to apply the gridiron mentality to school. And then I created the 6-year plan, I guess you could say. I finally graduated with a degree after 6 years in engineering. And when I graduated, it was in civil engineering, and we had a chance to design a subdivision. And it was a 13-acre site. We were given zoning. And I designed this subdivision, and literally in 1985, slam dunk and won the award because we presented it in CAD, and nobody even knew about CAD back then. But my partner's dad was an architect engineer who had just bought this program for $5,000. It was called VersaCAD, and he was going to start doing little architectural homes in CAD, and we did our project, and it planted a seed. And around that, I guess around when I graduated high school, the other seed, I guess there were these two seeds that I think triggered it. The first seed, was 1980 when Robert Allen wrote the book No Money Down. And I was like, well, I can't afford a car. So how does somebody buy a house with no money down? But I put the book on the shelf, went to college like my dad told me to go, struggled a bit, fast forward to where I just was, created the 6-year plan, finally graduated New Jersey Institute of Technology, and then went on for a couple master's degrees and really learning about building and civil engineering. And it wasn't until late in my career, middle of my career, say late in my career, in my early 30s, where I said, I really should learn this real estate thing because, I have a really good job, but I have a really high debt, and, I need to put my twins through college. So what's the next step? So that's how it kind of started.
Nice. And so when you started, I would assume it wasn't with a skyscraper. What were your first couple deals like, and kind of where did that lead you?
Yeah, so my first deal, believe it or not, was, and it was a development, and it was an assisted living. So it was 113 bed assisted living was my first project. Wow. And that's how I started. So I kind of came in thinking, wow, how can I pay myself the check that, the construction company was paying me? I was working for Liew McGovern Bovis. They were restoring the Statue of Liberty. So I was in a high profile construction atmosphere, but didn't know anything about the real estate. So I went in thinking if I could earn myself some fees on a property that I could buy, and because I don't have any real equity, and get a little piece of ownership, that would be good. So that's how I kind of got started. It was a very unusual start. I kind of called it top-down learning because it wasn't, maybe 10 years later until I did my first residential deal.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, that is, I think most people start with single family homes and kind of progress from there. But it just shows you like it's just a mental thing, I think, that people
It really
have.
is.
Yeah. That you got to
Like, and when I finally got to single family homes, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm like, okay, like what's this wood thing, and we built with concrete, but then, and it really is because in a house, you have there's a cycle, right? You build the foundation, you frame it, you put the skin on, you put the windows in the siding, you put the roof on, and that's the exact same thing you do with a skyscraper.
Yeah.
It just takes a little longer, of course, and it's when you actually get your arms around that, because it's like kind of like a 1,200-pound gorilla. Like, what did he just say?
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I've never, developed a skyscraper. I've done some commercial multifamily projects. I've done some, luxury, either, either ground up builds or flips, single family houses.
Yeah.
And it felt like the complexity level was much higher. Maybe it was just because I was just used to your typical, single family flip or rental. But I would imagine on a project, especially in New York City, where there's layers of bureaucracy that you're working with as well, and so many different subs, designers, architects, like how do you manage all of that complexity and still have any shred of sanity at the time?
I love it. You finally got it. You really got that, because it was a point in my life. I'm like, how am I going to get through a day? And I realized that the what's so of my life was kind of insanity. It was like, there was constant problem solving. And I really had to say, like, you know what, as the leader of, 6 skyscrapers at once, concrete company, 300 employees, your life is just, problem solving. And that's the what's so, and it's okay. And, when you kind of have that mentality that there's so many moving parts, and you have to, really delegate, it's eliminate, delegate, automate, right? So where each skyscraper started in my lap with a design team, you mentioned there's several design principles each week. You have a design team meeting with the owner and design. You have, contractor meeting. You're always moving the design forward. There's shop drawing process, the architecture meeting. There's really like 3 meetings. You piggyback the owner architect meeting together, then the trade meetings. You're constantly on a weekly basis following through, to just follow up on those moving parts. But it's like anything else. You have to put systems in place, and if the systems are in place and the structure for fulfillment is in place, in anything you do in life, most likely you're going to be successful.
Got it. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. It's just, I guess, bigger systems than most of us are probably used to. And I think, for most, I like what you said, that it's just kind of like one house after another until you eventually have a skyscraper. For most people listening to this, I think their goal is financial freedom. It's just getting to a point where their passive income exceeds their expenses. So for you, when you're doing projects like this at this time, what was your goal? I mean, what was the outcome you were after? Because obviously, projects of this size, you're probably going to get to financial freedom and then some. So what is it that kept you driving? What were you trying to achieve?
Yeah. And I want to just say that, the most important thing in this call is, I was just a normal guy, put my pants on one leg at a time. And I went and took on this career. And I fortunately lived near New York City. So after you look at enough skyscrapers, you go, wow, I wonder if I can build one of those, So, it was one of those things where, I just went out there and gave it a shot. It wasn't, anything, that normal people do. And then I learned that, that doesn't necessarily make you happy. And yes, you can achieve all these goals and become the #1 best-selling author. And yes, it made me delightful. But, at the end of the day, what I really enjoy now is, enjoying my twins. They're going to be 30. They're getting, one's married to a doctor. We got grandkids on the way. I have 75 acres under development, which is fun. But, I think what I teach my students now is, like you just said, what is it that you need coming in each week to be happy, right? You don't need to billion dollars. You don't necessarily have to have $1 million in the bank. It makes things a little easier. But if you have $10,000 in expenses per month and you're making 20,000, you're in pretty good shape. You're living a good life, So, I didn't realize back then, like, what did I really want? I was more like in a panic, like, how am I going to pay for my kids to go to college? My dad climbed telephone poles and was a hard blue collar worker, went to, pump gas at night, 2 jobs, worked at a synagogue on the weekends. He hustled, and I just took a little bit different approach,
Yeah. 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 And obviously it paid off for you. You built a ton of success. I was listening to another interview that you did, and you talked a bit about how the 2008 financial recession hit you and hit you pretty hard. Can you share a little bit about that as well? And, maybe some lessons that you took away from that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, so the one thing lesson is that, when something happens to you, don't fall down a rabbit hole and think in your head that you caused the collapse, because, when something hits you like that and you kind of get, cross body blocked, or, you being an officer, or even a football player, you get your bell rung, and then everything you ever studied in your whole life doesn't kind of work, and I guess, the lesson I learned is, you can recover, like, because that day I thought the world was coming to an end, because everything I learned wasn't applying that day. But, the skill sets that you have in the career you do today, or what, whether you move into real estate, everything's applicable, right? So when the pieces all fell apart, it was really like, go back to the basics. Like, how did you get to where you are today? If 500 cranes have stopped in New York City, and things are going to be on pause, there are other businesses, I actually, and the way that brought me to my success today is, growing up, I was a magician. And, when that market crashed, there was a picture in Real Estate Weekly in New York City they took a picture of me performing magic in Jacob Javits Center. I was hustling to make money.
Yeah.
Because my whole world went upside down. You lose around $1 million in one day, all your projects stop. They didn't come back. We lost the toy building, St. Vincent's Hospital, and a city block on 6th Ave. Lehman had mezzanine loans, and, we never saw it again. It was like pretty much, I don't know what we eventually got. I mean, I had to exit that partnership because I was just so emotionally distraught on what had happened. I didn't know really what I wanted to do. It took me a couple years to kind of get back into it. I got back in at 12. By 15, I was, we were pouring concrete towers in New York City, and we were back strong, but it was crazy. And I guess the biggest takeaway is, the Tony Robbins training I had in 2001, when the towers collapsed. I thank God for having that, because, that didn't kill me then. It made me stronger. But, really going back to that personal development, going to the New York City power teams, hanging out with, like-minded people, rolling again, but it was an interesting time that, you just got to have some faith. You'll work it out. You will work it out. Just never give up. That's what I took out of that. Never give up, man.
Yeah.
Never give up.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, haven't experienced anything like that. I mean, if you got in since 2011, all you've experienced is an up market. So it's like hard for people to wrap their head around that it could change. And it could change very quick. Like you said, one day, $300 million. I mean, that's just like so hard to even believe.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And now I think back, like, was I leveraged with Lehman Brothers? Back then that probably wasn't, it wasn't a lot, like, we had a bunch of equity, but, they lent billions of dollars back then, like, and they were around for 100 years. So to think that they would vaporize, I was like, yeah, it was tough.
Yeah. So what do you do differently now, if anything, that you feel like, I mean, do you feel like you you're in a position where that couldn't happen to you again, or it's just like one of those things that just happens, or like there's something different you do now?
I mean, it's interesting. So do I ever think it would get to that point again? I mean, it could, I mean, there's some interesting, and we knew about it. It was, on 60 Minutes last night, talking about, how, the Black Rocks are coming in and, a couple big companies as such, have 70,000 single family homes, 80,000 single family homes. Anytime there's, that type of conglomeration, I guess, there could be, some sensitivity to a collapse. I guess the thing that's different now is that there's such a demand for housing. I don't know that the market will ever crash again the way it did. There was a lot of Wall Street corruption back then that kind of lit people up, I think, and people have some second thoughts. So as far as do I look different? Yeah, I guess, I just by nature, I'm not putting stuff in all eggs in one basket because I'm on different states now. And, I guess I'd probably never do it again. I haven't been in a situation that I'd even consider that, because there's just, New York was kind of like it was almost like a vacuum. You could raise money really quick in like a small block radius, and things went really fast, and and it's not like that anymore, and Lehman was the biggest thing. Like if you could do business with Lehman, you were golden, you had nothing to worry about. So just like anything else, calculate your risk.
Yeah. And I heard somebody talking about this right after COVID hit, where everyone was like talking about how the world was about to end. And, and this person had been around for a long time. And they said, this is another example. Like it never comes the same way it's come in the past, whether it was the savings and loan crisis or the .com bubble or the 2008 or COVID, you have some maybe similar results, or you're always going to have the market cycles as a result of these things that happen, but it's always going to be something different that causes it, so I think people are like bracing for another '08 to potentially happen the same way. And it's like, that's not going to happen because, most likely we have subprime mortgages figured out a little bit more these days, but there's going to be something that comes out.
There's definitely going to be some blow up, because, people are leveraged, as soon as the value, drops a little bit, they'll be underwater. There will be another foreclosure frenzy. I just don't know and don't believe, not that I don't know, but I don't believe that they'll, like the residential markets, the values are going to, drop excessively. But, it really comes down to just like you talk about, like, it's the fundamentals. If someone's trying to stretch themselves, the market fluctuates. So, if your property goes down in 10 years, it's probably going to be up again. But, if you get stuck in a pickle and then and you have a cash flow crunch, I mean, I own, lots of property, but everybody has cash flow crunches. There's just cash flow crunches. It's just, you got to be able to weather the storm,
Yeah. And I think that leads well into your book, The Modern Wealth Building Formula. Can you just give kind of an overview of, I guess, why you wrote the book and then what the premise of the book is?
Yeah. The premise really was around how I developed a $17 million project using other people's experience and other people's money, and how, it's a bit of a game, in the sense that, I looked at it. I mentioned earlier when I finally applied my gridiron experience of, playing football, being an all-state football player, playing baseball, winning state championships in sports. I looked at it really as kind of a game. There's like a pregame warm-up. You have to kind of size yourself up and see where you're at in the lineup and what you really want to achieve. And, and then it's broken down into, as simple as terms as I can say in real estate is you have to find deals, you have to fund deals, and you have to facilitate deals. So I've always looked at it from a find, fund, and facilitate approach. So you could break it down in the sense that, you're always going to be learning on how to find deals a little bit more effectively. And then you'll have your systems where the deals just come into you. And you're always learning about creative funding and the different types of funding, and, the different private funding and the different secured funding and, all kinds of stuff. There's just funding is a journey, and facilitating real estate. You mentioned it, are you getting into large amount of units? Are you just, creating a portfolio in your hometown? Do you need property managers? Do you want to be a property manager? Do you want to be passive, active? How do you want to manage the process? How do you want to facilitate the acquisitions? Do you want to do it as a business? So with all these thoughts in my mind, I tried to keep it simplified and say, hey guys, real estate's like an ice cream store. Go in, start tasting the flavors, see which ones you like, narrow it down, make a game out of it, have some fun, see where your skill sets are, where they fit in, and just give it a shot. That's kind of where it came from, like I did. I didn't really know what I was doing, but sometimes you don't know how your success looks. You just have to take that first step.
Yeah. And it seems like you do a great job of taking your experience on these massive projects and maybe more complexity than most beginners can understand, and relating it and breaking it down to the first steps for someone to take. And so I'm curious, what would be your advice to someone who's listening to this, who hasn't started yet? But around like, what are the best first steps to take?
Yeah. The first best step, if you're interested in real estate, because you get, and the way I started was, you want to start a company. And, you can open up a company for a couple $100, form an LLC, and you will immediately, excuse me, have about $10,000 that you could write off instantly. And then you get the benefits of having a company and being an entrepreneur. And really that's the first step, because, real estate, you should treat from the beginning as a business, even if you're going to be an investor, and just, start, educating yourself, whether you go to a YouTube channel and start, listening to people in real estate, or Googling things. You'll realize that, real estate is a little puzzle, and then you may want a mentor, but, get started with finding a mentor, pick a couple books and try to keep it simple,
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great advice. And you also mentioned in the book that now you feel like now is a great time to be investing in real estate. And I hear a lot in, different Facebook groups and stuff. People are always saying, oh, the prices are so much higher and, it's so competitive. Like, should I just wait? So why is it that you feel like right now is a good time to be getting into real estate?
Yeah, well, like anything else, real estate is a speeding train, and, it's preparation meeting opportunity, and, it's continuous and never ending improvement of learning how to find deals better, fund deals quicker and facilitate deals, where you may ultimately, be vertically integrated and do everything, So, like any crazy market where everything's out of control, there's always fallout. And it really comes down to, relationships and building a deep emotional rapport, because, there's deals that I get that people are like, yeah, I definitely want to make sure that this guy doesn't buy it. Right. And, and it's like my competitor, because, I have a rapport with the guy, and, I'm more concerned about, his purpose in life, and not just, about, something else. So, I've just taken a slightly different approach,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of intangibles that go into it. Like you said, like you'll get deals that other people maybe might not. And it's based on those relationships and things that you've built over time.
And then if you're not in it, and if you're not in it, then you may lose out. So, I guess it's like, I look at everything like sports, so, you can go in the stands and watch the game a little bit, and then you go get on the field, but you shouldn't leave the stadium, right? So, get into the stadium if you have an interest in real estate, and, keep in mind that, 9 out of 10, millionaires, earned a lot of it through real estate, so if you're playing an odds game and you're in this for the money, or at least the financial freedom that you mentioned, you should have some type of real estate in your portfolio.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one thing to listen to podcasts about it, and it's another thing to actually practice it. Yeah.
That's what I call living in a world of performance. It's black or white. You're either in action or out of action.
Yeah. That's a good point. Um, After all your experience doing so many different deals in different markets, what do you invest in now? Like what's your ideal deal? You mentioned the 75 acre development, correct?
Yeah.
So is that like an ideal deal for you, or is just like it was one that was opportune?
So great question. So like for the last 2-3 years, I've been buying land and then creating like bunch of like mini developments within the development, right? And then that's leading to like in Lewisburg on 45 acres, we have over 100 townhomes. I was just on the phone with the attorneys trying to figure out the associations within the associations. We have some residential on top of retail, similar to like New York City. We have flex office. We have retail site where I could put a Chick-fil-A. I have a hotel site. We have a wellness center, medical office.
Wow.
So these
Where
are
is
all
that?
little. What's that?
Sorry, where is that located?
It's in Lewisburg, North Carolina.
Okay.
And by going in, and kind of doing this, now it led to a conversation with planning administration. We've now helped them work with their master plan downtown, the 2030 plan. It could lead into some more development. So I've kind of really, I guess, went into more entitlement, and that's what the fund that I'm creating. And there's people out there buying land like crazy, but there's probably more people trying to buy multifamily.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw something today. Somebody in the residential market said there's like 35 people looking for one house now. So there's such a shortage. It's going to be interesting. Like anything else, it really just comes down to, like I said, get into the game. It's about building deep emotional rapport. It's about merging ecosystems with other people, which creates, what I call is relationship equity. My whole philosophy early in life was, I have to horizontally innovate. I call it, I got to meet everybody. It's 6 degrees of separation. Eventually it gets down to 2 degrees. You know everybody, but it's the vertical innovation and the in-depth, deep emotional rapport relationships, and the few people you have those relationships that'll essentially set you free. You don't need to work so hard. It's look at what you have, and get into deep thinking and deep work and focus on what you really want, and get clarity, because clarity gives leverage, and you'll achieve pretty much whatever you put your mind to.
That leads me perfectly into the next question that I had for you. I was curious, after I've interviewed about 115 different successful real estate investors on this show, I've noticed that almost to a person, that real estate success and their personal development, it's almost like they're inextricably linked. And I know you've been a lifelong learner. You mentioned you worked with Tony Robbins closely. Is there a practice or philosophy or a model that you might have learned along the way that kind of stands out to you, that you feel like made a big impact in your personal development, and then obviously most likely in turn in your business as well?
Yeah, and not that, I don't want to, repeat things that other people may have. Tony was all about, take massive action. And, and I, was always, an early riser. I remember him saying, if you work 3 additional hours, and start at 5, everybody else starts at 8 at the end of the year, you have like, 30 extra weeks of progress, so, I had been taking that approach early on. When I finally realized, it was about, health and fitness and about energy, and, it came down to, discipline, so I'm preaching to the choir here, a graduate of West Point, but it came down to like, you did, you woke up, you did your PT, I wake up, I move, I do my PT, I meditate, and I really get into my deep work early. And I did that for years. I do that now, but I guess I call it a morning ritual. Recently, probably in the last couple of years, I started a little bit of an evening ritual where, I was always working till midnight or, just hustling all the time. But I noticed that by toning it down, at a little bit less hour and kind of like just looking at what you accomplished and thinking about tomorrow, you actually manifest a lot of stuff while you're sleeping. I noticed a real habit I learned over the years is time blocking, which is all reverse engineered back from what you really want in your life. We talked about the clarity, right? Because, if you're going to time block 3 mission critical things every day, you want it related to what you want in your life, typically something related to business, something related to relationships, and something related to health. When you have children and business, you're always building some relationship. There's always something you can do to build a deeper emotional rapport. Health and fitness, there's always something we can do, right? Whether it's about wellness, mental wellness, personal development. I've always invested annually in myself. But these are, I guess, a few of the things that I still do to this day. I'm very like journal where I write down what I'm grateful for each day, what my 3 mission critical things are, morning and evening ritual, and then time blocking, if I were to sum it up.
I was looking for a much easier silver bullet. It sounds like a lot of work.
You know what? Maybe you want me to just give you one thing?
No, that was fantastic. That, and it's all because it all builds on itself. It's all these little intangible things that kind of that build on each other. What's the goal that you're working toward now? You've accomplished a lot. What keeps you motivated?
Yeah, what you just said was so important. It's the micro distinctions that make the maximum impact. And, that leads into, I think what really keeps me motivated is that, I finally reached a point where this year I was asked to speak and create a documentary with Dennis Quaid. We are creating Real Estate Today, Keys to Investing. They're actually going to fly in a production crew to New York and do all kinds of recording. Nice. So, I really get to, say and step into what I believe that I always was, a national expert, just from being fortunate and blessed from going on probably like a class trip when I was a kid, to the Empire State Building and looking out going like, wow, I'm going to build one of these buildings one day, and that's what happened, and, that's where we went on our class trips every year. And it was just so fascinating, to have this life and to be able to pay it forward. So, it really comes down to how I can, help people, get what they want in their life, and to have people lean on, us to, get over the humps that we've had. The last couple of years has been tough for people, and people sometimes don't have the view that they would like. Right. And, I always believe that if you can change your view, you can change your life.
That's awesome. If people want to get a copy of your book, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, on my website, I think if you go to kenvanliew.com/free book, I believe it is, or just go to the website, you can literally get the book for free. I ask you to just pay for shipping because it's in some warehouse where there's a bunch of boxes of books. And another thing I always give to people, which I just produced, is the 11millionairesecrets.com. Just some of the secrets that we were talking about today, like the mindset and, how you present yourself, and just in respect to not the dress, but the certainty of how you present yourself. And those little secrets, if you go to 11millionairesecrets.com, you'll really like what you hear. Go to the website, get the book, kenvanliew.com. And I think our website's going to get revamped. But, if there's a button there that says Discover Now, if you ever wanted to talk to me, I'm available by phone. And, that's it. I'm not that hard. I put my pants on just like, everybody else. And I got started with $10 a week. And, I appreciate people coming and asking me, how you get started. Because, it wasn't as easy as it looks. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and the website too, just for people who are listening, he's got it's not Liew, L-E-W, it's L-I-E-W. So V-A-N-L-I-E-W. That's how you spell his last name. And it's a great website. You could check out some of his projects that he's done there too. Some very impressive projects over the years. And Ken's also very active on all the social platforms. I saw your YouTube channel. He's putting out a lot of content there. So definitely check it all out. I really appreciate the time today. I know the community is really going to benefit from this interview.
No, this was fabulous, Kirby. Thank you so much. And it's my pleasure.
Awesome. Take care.